Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, and welcome to our second event, Opportunity Zones for Expanding Businesses, the second in our series. This is the Founders Panel. We are very excited to be here today as part of Riverside County's Innovation Month. We are having a two-part series. The first was last week. The second is this week to help businesses in Opportunity Zones get the information that they need. We'll do some quick introductions and then turn it over to Rob Moran from the County of Riverside for a welcome. So let's kick off with Rob, please.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Rob Moran with the County of Riverside Office of Economic Development. Welcome.
Thank you, Rob. And Len?
Hi, I'm Len Mills. I'm the CEO of the Verte Opportunity Fund, a qualified opportunity zone fund that invests in early stage companies.
Awesome. Thank you, Len. Ajit?
Yes, I'm Ajit George, the founder of Second Chances Farm in Wilmington, Delaware. We are an opportunity fund that only invests in our own projects, and we are what makes us unique is we hire formerly incarcerated persons that we call returning citizens.
Amazing. John?
Hi, John Hilgers. I'm co-founder of Clear Skies, which is a qualified opportunity zone business based here in Southern California.
And Trey?
Hi, everyone. My name is Trey Bradley, and I'm a senior business development specialist in the Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development. So manage some of the business assistance work here in Southern California, but also lead a lot of our place-based initiatives inclusive of opportunity zones. So happy to be here.
Awesome. Excited for this amazing panel. My name is Stacy Cumberbatch. I'm with Blended Impact, which is a venture development firm based here in Riverside County. And I'm very pleased to also lead the Opportunity Zone initiatives alongside the county via Opportunity Riverside. We are tracking and assisting businesses and real estate developments that need help in the Opportunity Zones to get access to capital. This presentation or this panel is really to provide information to both cities and founders in the zones that may need that help. So to set a little bit of context in terms of what we're going to talk about today, you'll notice on this panel, we don't have any CPAs and we don't have any attorneys. That was last week's panel. So if you have not seen that video or seen that presentation, we will definitely share that information with you so that you can view that so you can get Opportunity Zones 101 if needed. This panel is meant to be more informal. You'll get some direct perspectives from founders that have raised and are raising in opportunity zones, as well as investors, Len, who will be speaking to actually investing in the zones. This is not meant to be a one-on-one, but we'll make sure that you have that information if needed with follow-up emails. If you were on last week's event, you'll remember that we had a $200 million fund that invested in a private equity style manner. We were pleased to have Arcturus Impact Investors with us. This presentation is going to be a little bit different because we have a venture capital style fund on this. So you'll be able to see two different styles of investing in opportunity zones. And we're very excited to have Len with Vert Opportunity Fund with us. So with that, I just wanted to set that context. And I think I'll turn it over to Len first. We're going to jump right into it. And if you need links to any of the panelists today, we just dropped that in the chat. Please feel free to bookmark their links and check out their information after the event as well. But Len, would love to hear how you came into the space. Tell us about your fund, how you invest, companies you've invested in, what you look for. We want to know everything about how your Opportunity Zone fund works and how you look at companies, please.
Okay, great. Yeah. So this is our second venture capital fund. Our first fund was not an opportunity zone fund, but how I came into the opportunity zone space and why we wanted to create the second fund is actually I'm an economist by training, and I think this is tremendous tax policy, honestly, that helps, has a lot of potential to help communities that have historically not had as much capital as other communities. In venture capital, 90% of the venture capital funds go to 4 states, one of them being California, but it's principally in certain areas of California. It's not as widespread, LA and San Francisco and the Bay Area. So that's my personal interest. What we look for with respect to the companies we're investing in, again, we, again, are investing in fairly early stage companies. And the reason I bring that up is that compliance is very important to any OZ investor. And when we're dealing with early stage companies, one of the benefits of dealing with early stage companies is they typically lease their property. So they don't really have a real estate component to their company. It depends on the company, of course, some do, but by and large, the companies that we're invested in do not typically own any real estate. The reason I bring that up is within the opportunity zone rules around businesses and real estate investments, many of the rules are related to the real estate. When you actually peel away all of that complexity on the real estate side, what I encourage, or what I find encouraging with respect to founders of early stage companies, is the rules aren't bad. Compliance is very important to the fund investors. So you got to abide by the rules, and that's one of the criteria that we certainly evaluate companies on. However, I try not to scare people with that word compliance, because for a business, this actually can be done. And the basic rules are, especially for a small company, that you're operating in the zone. Fundamentally, so your labor is in the zone. There's 50% requirements and things like that. But again, most companies are, if they're located in the zone, they're going to be operating in the zone. Likewise, any equipment or furniture or supplies or inventory or things like that that they have, by virtue of them being located in the zone, all the rules kind of go away. This is where we're located, and this is where we're doing business, and this is where our workers are, and this is where we're generating revenue out of. So there's a list of rules that the CPAs will go with that went through that. However, it is very practical to do a early stage company in a opportunity zone. Basically, because you're a brand new company, you don't have any legacy things to worry about, and you don't have any real estate that you got to double in value. So that's one of the advantages of being an early stage company. The other criteria that are important to us, and every fund is different, and that's one thing I want to emphasize. So one thing I would point out to the founders, and for that matter, for the economic development folks, is that it's actually somewhat important to learn about your fund, and it could be about the fund that may be interested in you. Every fund has a little bit different strategy, and that's what makes them different. And they may have different criteria, if you will, that they evaluate companies on, or any investment. One of the things that's quite important to us is the economic impact in the opportunity zone, or what we can foresee as the economic impact. We're long-term investors, so we take a long-term committed capital point of view. We like to see things that are happening in the community around that company. So we're looking for the company to do good. So that's the usual due diligence you have with any company, but we're also looking for the companies to have an impact in that community. So things like, what's the workforce development process inside the company? How do they interact with the business leaders or the community leaders in that particular opportunity zone? And again, every opportunity zone is different. So how that works is a very local kind of situation. I'll give you a couple examples. So one of the companies we invested in was a company called the Outlook Company. They are located in East Baltimore, a historic area in East Baltimore. They moved into a lease space in an abandoned building, but the real estate developer redeveloped the building, and they moved into that space as one of the anchor tenants within that space. It's a beautiful old historic building, goes back to the 1800s, mid 1800s, but they restored it. And they're bringing jobs into that particular neighborhood. And the types of jobs that they're bringing are jobs that would traditionally not be in Baltimore. They are actually, it's an animation studio. It'd be much more akin to being in LA or Southern California. It's an animation studio that is developing children's cartoons and movies and video games. So it's something that is not really in this geographic area, but it's an area that the local residents would find attractive to get job training around that particular business. Baltimore, they're primarily interested in job growth and the types of jobs of the future. So all the animation technologies on computers these days, so those are jobs of the future. The other one, just to give you a total other end of the spectrum, is we did an investment in Arizona, New Mexico with respect to with the Native American tribe there. And they were actually less, in that particular case, less interested in jobs, relatively speaking. They want that, but they also want to have environmentally friendly businesses. The environment is quite important to that culture. And so we entered into a carbon sequestration project with the idea of helping them manage their forest, that they had a large tract of land, to maximize basically the carbon intake from the forest. They had actually abandoned their forest management business before, primarily because they didn't like cutting down trees. But now, if you could prudently manage the forest and do that, you can actually, it's better for the environment. Basically, you harvest the old trees and plant new trees. That's the second thing. And of course, so we're looking for compliance. We're looking for impact, and the impact can be measured different ways. I try to give you 2 examples of that. And finally, the company itself. It's got to be a good company, and we're investors. We're looking for good returns.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Len. And I actually want to just clarify one thing that you said. You said you invest in early stage companies. Sometimes this can mean pre-revenue. Sometimes this can mean that they raised a certain amount. How do you define it, just so that folks get an idea of, hey, these are the the bullet points that you're looking for?
Yeah, that does have a wide range. That's fair enough. Our particular strategy, but it's not exclusive, is we invest in very early stage startups. Many of them are pre-revenue, not all. So they're either looking to expand from a very small base, or they haven't generated any revenue at all. But that's our strategy. Again, it's important that you know your fund. That fund, that's what works for us. There'll be different funds that might be farther along in that spectrum.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Len. I think this is a good transition to go to one of our founders on the panel, just so we can get a investor to founder type of perspective. Ajit, I'm going to go to you first, because you've been raising in the Opportunity Zone Fund. So you have an Opportunity Zone Fund and a qualified Opportunity Zone business, and you've raised funds. So would love for you to share, how did you start the company? How has the fundraising process been for you? Tell us about your business and why it might be attractive and make sense for an Opportunity Zone location. Would love to hear how the process has been for you. Oh, and you're on mute, please.
There we go. I am unmuted. It's hard to follow Len, but because I think next life I want to just be I want to have a fund to invest, because it's much more fun than what I'm doing. But I know he's doing great work. Thanks for allowing me to have this opportunity. So we started this idea in 2017, way before I ever heard of opportunity zones, or let opportunity zones were actually became law. And the idea was to create an indoor vertical farm, or a series of indoor vertical farms. But at that point, I was thinking of one farm. And the real idea was to have a social mission, but I didn't want to create a nonprofit. I wanted to create a for-profit entity that was sustainable. And to do that, I wanted to have a business approach, and to help the indoor vertical farm. The reason I went to indoor vertical farming was because I looked at, my passion was to try to reduce recidivism by hiring almost exclusively what we call formerly incarcerated persons as returning citizens in our business model. But because it wasn't a profit, it was a for-profit business, we needed to be sustainable. So that's the challenge. In many ways, most social missions are nonprofits, but they require to go out and fundraise each year. I wanted to leave a legacy behind of a model that actually was sustainable economically. And so when the opportunity funds became law, I said to myself, this was a pretty extraordinary opportunity to see combine what I considered a good purpose. And so we are in a 47,500 square foot building, which is in an opportunity zone. And then we have an opportunity business. And and our structure is exceptionally complicated for reasons that I will explain to you. We are based in Delaware, but we also use a very specific strategy. We use a Delaware Series LLC, and people will LLC. And so the difference between a traditional LLC and a Series LLC is that I can create one entity, which is Second Chances Farm LLC, which is not a parent. It literally is the incorporating entity. And then underneath it, each of my business operations have a series. And under Delaware law, each series is considered independent, and so that you don't need to incorporate and pay all the franchise fees and the incorporations. You are treated differently. Why did we do series LLCs? Well, we wanted to have the branding of Second Chances Farm across the board, and so we have a Second Chances Farm Series 1, which would be a management service organization, or MSO for those who are familiar with it, that would sort of manage the other series. And Series 2 actually owned the building, and so purchased the building. And because there are people who might want tax advantages, as Lynn pointed out, there are people who are interested in real estate because it's an opportunity zone project, and because there's depreciation and other benefits that go with the building. There's potentially also appreciation at the end. Series 3 was really our Farm 1, which was really our prototype farm, or our farm on the stuff. And then Series 4 is a hemp operation. I'm a licensed hemp grower that's in the other part of the building. And then Series 5 is our investment in creating a farm in Philadelphia, so forth and so on. I won't bore you with all the details, but so we have this very relatively complicated structure to wake up in any given morning and say, who am I representing and which interests? So the building, for example, which is the Series 1 actually rents the space to Farm 1 and to the hemp farm. So they are actually tenants on the stuff. So it's very, I'm going to encourage those of you who are thinking of opportunity funds to actually look at the Delaware Series LLC as a model, because it gives you the flexibility of having one entity and one branding, but to have freestanding entities. And particularly if you set it up properly, you can have one or two fail, but it doesn't affect the whole entity because it's not a parent. There's not a consolidated stuff. So because when you start any of these, there's zero assurance that you can be successful. Although we all think we're going to be exceptionally successful, as one who has been part of startups, I know that we can fail. So our structuring was done intentionally. It has become more complex, but it has helped us because I can represent, I'm with Second Chances Farm, and then when we get to a legal document, it'll be Series 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm working on a project, Second Chances Farm, to set up in Alabama, and it's Series 7. So so it's a brand new series, but it's not a new entity, but it's a new legal document and operating agreement when I set it up. So it's sort of interesting. That's all I can say. I thank God I didn't have to put all the series on my business card, so I just say Second Chance Farm LLC. Our business model. So there are two elements to the business model. One is really that we have this interesting mission to hire formerly incarcerated persons, create green-collar jobs, and to give them an opportunity to work in the farm and then to run the farm. And so I'll take a moment to tell you what the exit strategy is, because my goal was to create a new crop of compassionate capitalists. And really, what that means is that I wanted to provide a pathway to equity. And so that is because otherwise, what you have is more people working for somebody else. And I wanted loyalty from the folks who are working for us, like stock options at any emerging company, because a lot of people work a lot of hours because they get stock options. And so the way we have done the stock options here is what I tell my returning citizens in each farm, because each one is a separate series, is if you stay long enough, which is what I say is 5 to 7 years from now, I plan, this is me, and I have right now the majority shares in each of the LLCs, to essentially take my shares without obligating anybody else, because there are a lot of other investors involved. And I will give 10% of my shares to the employees that are still with me at that point. So that's my golden handcuff, for the lack of a better word. The truth is, people don't believe this is really going to happen. So, as we go along, it'll become more real. But the more important part is the remaining 90%, I will sell it to the employees as an employee stock ownership plan, as an ESOP, and with the structured plan, because none of the folks I have will have credit or capital. So the idea, the exit strategy will be in the early, if there's an opportunity fund, it'll be 7 years, 7 to 10 years, is I will liquidate out, but the folks who are working here will have an opportunity to buy. So that is really my pathway to success. The second part of our equation is really to pay a meaningful wage upfront. We're not California, which is a very expensive community, but in our area, when you pay somebody $31,200 plus medical benefits, that is considered very good wages. And so that's what we pay for people who finish our initial training, which is 16 weeks, and start us. And that is, for that, we are able to attract people. So we give a significant compensation package, and then they have the opportunity to earn more money and by getting promoted. And then they have the opportunity to get equity, initially 10% from me, and then the balance they can buy into over 5 years after that. So our structure is unusual. So we are now looking to expand into an opportunity zone in Philadelphia, and we have just signed a letter of intent to lease a 50,000 square foot building in North Philadelphia, in a very challenging area, and that particular farm will be very large. It'll produce a lot of crops. And Philadelphia, of course, is a much larger city. It's the 5th largest city. And we will probably have 70 to 80 returning citizens working there. We're looking at a project in Alabama, which unfortunately is not in an opportunity zone. But what I have learned about opportunity zones is people are very curious about it, because we are also a public, I should say, we are a public benefit corporation, and that's a specific classification in Delaware. And we say we're qualified opportunity fund. What we find is when people find out they have to lock their money in for the length of period that the opportunity fund requires, they have to really want to be patient investors. And so I would say to you, we have raised substantially more funds from people who initially were thinking about opportunity funds, but they just became investors because it made business sense and they didn't want to lock their money in. So I look at the opportunity fund as a siren call. It's sort of like, it's sort of for those who are interested, they're interested in saving taxes, but when they find they have to lock it in, that's what, and the lock-in is pretty fixed, and there's not much flexibility. There is no incentive for opportunity zone businesses. My greatest criticism of the opportunity fund rules is it treats real estate and businesses the same way. So for us, we are a high-risk business, and there should have been shorter-term exit strategies for people invest in a business. And as a result, 95% of the money invested is in real estate, and very little has gone to opportunity zone businesses because they are the high risk. And to attract high risk, to lock them for 10 years makes it hard. But we are continuing to raise capital, and it's a blend of capital. And I would say to folks who are interested in participating is there's no one singular answer. There's no one singular bullet, unless you have large venture capital, which we are not attracting. Folks are not interested in when they hear my whole business model is based on formerly incarcerated persons. They'll say, let us come back to you in a year or two and see how it works out. Because the reality is there is very little proven models of a business surviving on it. So in many ways, we have pathway. But so we won't attract traditional venture capital on it. What we attract is people who like our social mission, want a reasonable rate of return, and whether it's through the opportunity fund or outside, and we are agnostic. We'll take the money from any passage, any way we get it, just write the check, and as long as it clears, you're part of the team. So I'll shut up at this point.
I love that. As long as the check clears, and I appreciate that you use it as a calling card, and folks invest both in and outside of the Opportunity Zone Fund mechanism.
Yeah.
So really appreciate that. I will remind folks that the Q&A box is open. So if you have questions that you, as you're hearing these panelists speak, Len and Ajit, and as we move on, please feel free to drop the questions in the comment box, and we'll get to them as we can. I do want to go on to our second founder on the panel, John, next, so that he can share how the process has been for him. So John, would love to hear how, tell us about your business. One, how did you start thinking about you wanting to raise Opportunity Zone capital, and what has that process been for you? Has it been the same as Ajit? Has it been different? Give us some details on how that process has been, please.
Yeah, it's thank you very much. I appreciate being on the panel, and it's really hard to follow him. I'm not going to give you some of that great information. I'm just a guy who just put some stuff together. That's it. Our business was originally not looking at opportunity zones. I'm in aviation, so let me tell you a little bit about Clear Skies so you have a perspective. What we do is we do renewable energy microgrids. Basically, we put in solar panels and batteries at airports. And then we introduce chargers, and that's chargers for the passenger vehicles out in the parking lots. That's for the ground service equipment, facilities, buses, tugs, and then electric aircraft. Electric aircraft are coming. So we went out and partnered with electric aircraft manufacturers, suppliers, airlines, and we even have a partner who's a race team who races electric aircraft at 250 miles an hour, 50 feet off the ground. The guy's nuts. I'll just tell you that. The guy's nuts. But anyway, Scott's a great guy. So it was a clean sheet business. I've been in aviation. Between my partner and myself, we had 30 years of aviation, but it was from technology. We had a small boutique, women-owned technology consulting company that we played with LAX and DFW and JFK all across the nation, but we were always a sub. We're always the little guy. We're always the small meat and potatoes, but we had the certs. So we had the certifications. So the certifications are super important. Well, they kind of transferred over. So we had to reinvent ourselves due to COVID. So we did, and we started this business putting in renewable energy microgrids. So partnered with everybody, went out, and we had to go. We've been on a learning curve that's about 90 degrees. It's crazy, but we've learned a lot. We made a lot of mistakes. That's okay. That's how you learn. Mistakes are fine. But so where are we now? So we found out about opportunity zones. There's 653 airports that happen to be in opportunity zones. It was kind of an easy score there. Renewable energy, if you've done any kind of media in the last 30, 45 days, you know it's the hottest ticket out there. But ours is different than Ajit's. So our play is different because we solve somebody's tax problem. We're not a growth venture capital. We do SPPAs, which are solar power purchase agreements. We are an independent power producer. and we write 20-year contracts with airports. However, I think earlier in the panel, it was brought up about, young startups and credit worthiness and that type of thing. Well, we have the credit of the airports. So that's a B at best. I mean, at worst, and it goes up from there. So then one of the other things that was brought up to me prior to the panel is the importance of working with your local governments, your state governments, and your federal governments. So let me tell you how we work with all the governments. So we are nationwide. We're going to put in 400 airports. We are a gigantic business. We didn't mean to be. We didn't start out that way. It's just it just happened. So we went out and we talked to the mayors. We went out to all the opportunity zones. We put 50 airports across the United States from San Francisco to the Florida Keys, basically Marathon, Florida. We went and talked to all those mayors. Well, those mayors introduced us to airport directors, who introduced us to state economic boards, who introduced us to governors, who introduced us to the Department of Energy. So yes, we have a fund. We invest in ourselves. There's expansion of business. If you're thinking about renewable energy and you might be interested in recycling or something like that, I'd be interested in talking to somebody about that. Opportunity zone, solar panels, or assembly. There's lots of opportunities. We just don't have the time. We don't have the time. But the point is this, we're getting funding. It appears, I can't say it's signed on the dotted line, but we've gotten a very good commitment from the Department of Energy. We have a very good commitment from several investors. We're working through the PPM, which, if you're going down that road, find an attorney that can watch your attorney who's watching the first attorney. That's what I have found. And attorneys they're not always right. Here's the challenge that I have. Most everybody, and Jeet mentioned this earlier, he said 90% is a real estate deal. It's all geared towards real estate. We're an opportunity zone business. Our play is different. Our offer is different. Our offer to our investor is nothing like they've ever seen. I give 60 cents on the dollar upfront depreciation that cannot be recaptured. Most real estate deals hold a bunch of depreciation back. You'll get a big payout at the end, but you have nothing. But to the point, they're a 10-year hold. So there's 9 different ways to skin a cat. Don't get boxed in and get lots and lots of opinions, and do your own research. And don't just take Uncle Buck, who's got, down the street. Oh yeah, that's a good deal. No, look around. That's what I can say is look around. But I'm very excited. We're tremendous growth. We're excited to be based here in Southern California. Even though that we push out the rest of the country and really around the world, we're actually working with 2 countries right now outside of the United States. So there's a really good Oz resource. There's go through Stacy, hit her up. That's how I got introduced to this group, and so on and so forth. So the community's tight and the community's small, and we all try and help each other. So Len and I have already had a conversation prior to this panel. So I'm just appreciative to be here. If anybody has any questions, let me know. Thanks.
Amazing. Thank you so much, John. And I appreciate the vote of confidence to reach out to me for helping these businesses, because that's essentially what we're here to do. We're here to be a resource for businesses in the community that's trying to raise funds, that's trying to expand, that's trying to get resources. So offhand, I know you said there are communities. There are several I would like to just share with people that may be considering where to find more resources. And these are founder-specific type of ones. So for example, an OpSites, and OZ Works Groups, and Opportunity DB. Those are typical ones that folks get plugged into. And Irene will drop those in the chat so that you all can have access to that. I'd also like to call out, I appreciate that you work so close in partnership with our state, local and federal governments on your business model, because there is quite a bit of support at the federal and state levels for opportunity zones. And that's a perfect segue to Trey from the state of California, Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development. He'll speak next. So Trey, would love to turn it over to you. Share your thoughts on the Opportunity Zone initiative, the incentive, what resources are available for small businesses, expanding businesses in the community, and how you support folks, both with grants, with programs, et cetera, that people should be looking at.
Great, thank you, Stacy. And I'm not sure how I follow everyone else here, because I kind of feel like the odd duck in the group here with what I'm coming with. So here at government, and what's my idea about opportunity zones, and what do I think about it for businesses. I know that I said earlier I wasn't going to share a presentation, but I will share one screen during this, because I just want to show some of the other financing options that are out there. I think Ajit's point about when he was talking about his example with Second Chance Farms was very interesting to me, in terms of how people view the incentive from a business perspective, and how they are thinking about holding it in terms of, being able to obtain the 10-year gain, a benefit on the federal tax reduction or elimination of capital gains. But I mean, I think the one thing that was also not mentioned in this one, that I think that we mentioned in the last webinar, Stacy, that I think is really important, is that at the end of the day, the tracks are tracks in need, and the federal government has very much realized that, and to the point that they have provided alignment and preferential pointing consideration, and over 300 plus federal grants, programs, loan programs, including into the current administration. So we've seen, I shared an example last week of a infrastructure grant for Rebuilding America that was released through the DOT that had preferential pointing for opportunity zones. There was recently I think it was last week, the US EDA funded 1.17 million to the city of San Jose to develop it was kind of to do several things. One thing was support small businesses, small manufacturers and opportunity zones, but also to do a small report on how small businesses could utilize the opportunity zone incentive. So I think that these kind of investments in the federal government, are one to show that, we recognize that these census tracts are census tracts of needs, and both private and public investment are good for them at the end of the day. And I think that was really the really conception of the incentive in the beginning. And the public investment being, that there's all of these different incentives, programs, and why is that lucrative to a business? And here at GoBiz, we speak with businesses every single day, constantly. And I see one of my colleagues in the attendance where we are constantly talking to businesses. And I guess that's where I should say a little bit about GoBiz for those who didn't join is, we are the point at the state for economic development and business assistance efforts. And we provide a suite of services to businesses at no cost, such as incentive navigation, site selection, permit assistance, foreign direct investment, export import trade. And, a lot of folks kind of sometimes call members of our teams like the consultants they don't have to pay for. And that's because we're really listening to what you're doing and trying to succeed as a business, and offering you different strategies and points to go forward with your plan and goal. We also do the same for communities. So communities come to GoBiz and maybe ask questions about how they want to do something with infrastructure, or we're talking about airports here, and airports are a great means to partnership with private and public. And they also open up the windows to lots of different bond and financing opportunities that exist at the state and federal government. So hearing from communities what they want to do in different projects and how we can plug in different state resources to assist. And so at GoBiz, I think that one thing that we speak to a lot of businesses and startups, specifically, we're talking about clean energy and clean energy startups who often look to the DOE for funding. We talk to them and we're explaining kind of how Opportunity Zone works. And for them as a business, they're hearing it and they're kind of thinking about like, well, maybe this is a means to attract capital from an investor, but kind of what else do I get as a business? At the end of the runway, the return and the incentive goes to the investor. And I think that the alignment of federal programs, which is something that is of high interest to many of the businesses we speak to, they think, well, if I locate just in the census tract and that offers me, slight amount of leverage as I'm going to pursue a DOE grant or a grant with, maybe with the SBA or any of the other federal agencies or partners, then that is something that I am interested in. And it came to a point where we had businesses, so interested in that element that we added it to our site selection process and adding opportunity zones, because even some of the medium to larger size business, we're talking about aerospace who has a lot of different federal grants and contracting opportunities that exist out there right now, interest in them being located in opportunity zone for the leverage that they can go for in pursuing federal programs. So I think that's 1.2 is to make is, even at the state, we have had alignment on several programs. We don't have we have a grants portal now, but we don't have a grants portal that is across the board as the federal grants.gov. So we are working, piecemeal to align opportunities with the incentive. But the good thing about the state of California is that if you look at any of the investment that is made through California Climate Investments and Cap and Trade, or SB1 funding, which is for transportation funding, if you just looked on a map where those investments fall, they often fall in the same census tracts as opportunity zones. And the reason being is because there's several metrics that guide place-based investment within the state of California for disadvantaged communities, for communities burdened by environmental pollution and environmental justice, that fall directly on the same census tracts. And so, I think that being able to say that you're in that census tract, supporting that community through, Cal EnviroScreen, if you're a climate-based community company, or those other means is leverage to go pursue state opportunities. And, there's a lot of those different activities going on within the Inland Empire. We look at the Transformative Climate Communities Award to City of Ontario that has the incubator there. There's the Transformative Climate Communities Award that was made to Riverside. But you see that the census tracts of where the location of that place-based designation under the state is like right on top of opportunity zones. And so I think the alignment across the board in government is that we're all trying to invest and help the same areas, whether that's through a private tax incentive or a public incentive. For helping businesses, I just wanted to share this one screen that I put together for this one presentation before I was going to do a PowerPoint, was just different examples, and you're able to see, right? Good to go. Is just different examples of financing for businesses that exist at the state of California. And I'm just going to kind of go over these briefly, but small business financing is that there's a lot of different means to pair, different forms of capital and whatever you're trying to do and pursue as a business. And the first, we have our Small Business Finance Center at the iBank. We're really fortunate to have, kind of two tranches of where small business financing comes from, both through the Treasurer's Office and through our Infrastructure and Economic Development Bank. We then go down to lender networks and financial development corporations to provide capital, loans and small business loan guarantees up to $20 million to do projects and growth or however the business wants to pursue it. We also have a program called Jumpstart, which is micro loans to low-income entrepreneurs, those who are in disadvantaged areas, which is really looking to kind of offer that form of capital that is able to be achievable by those areas that oftentimes may not be. And then we have some of these disaster relief, California Rebuilding Fund. We also have the Capital Access Loan Program, which also provides small business financing, but then also selective financing for trucks, clean trucks, EV charging stations. And then I highlighted some market specific financing options We have CalSeed, which is a funding for clean energy startups that is funded by the Energy Commission and via grant funding. So, there is a cohort that is developed with CalSeed and the California Energy Commission that then looks to bring clean energy startups to market, to commercialization. And it's funded by our basically an R&D arm at the California Energy Commission under the EPIC program. And then we have iBank industrial development bonds for manufacturers. We have pollution control financing for green bonds for large projects. If you are looking to do, we've talked about different types of forms of renewable energy, or if there's kind of certain waste diversion stream projects. It's a large qualifiable list of environmental projects that are eligible for that type of financing. We have a recycling market development zone loan program, which is, I know that Rob hopped off, but that is another form of capital. As long as you are a business that is looking to build your business to divert something that would normally go into the waste stream, there is a specified loan program that offers fairly low interest rate for those types of building you to succeed in the market. It is also a place-based incentive. So there are specified zones within the state where we are encouraging this loan programming, and that very much align with opportunity zones. And then we have like farm loans and agricultural loans for those types of businesses as well. And I know that it's not mentioned on here because it's not currently into the budget, but there is a portion within the governor's proposed budget that includes a California Dream Fund. So that is a $35 million to startups for seed funding for entrepreneurs. So there is a lot of different, I think the point I'm trying to sum is there's a lot of different financing options at the state, and there's a lot, and this is just what I was able to throw up here in 10 minutes before I came onto the presentation. But there is a lot of different incentives, and I will go back to one slide where, and I know that Stacy has already put it in the chat, but we have a website which is business.ca.gov, and really it's here geared towards you, the business. This is where you can go to find your industry. There's just lists of incentives, and this is also a sneak peek at what you're seeing here is that we do have an update coming to the State Opportunity Zone website. So we have opzones.ca.gov, which I know many folks have been in to use the map feature to search your address. So we do have an update coming to that website that will include a lot of incentives for alignment with opportunity zones. It'll also include a page that has examples of state investment in opportunity zones, both in businesses and in projects. And it will also include a section touching on our California Promise Zones. So there's a lot to come. And so I'd say that, look forward to that in the state. We have a new website. We're trying to reinvigorate a lot of the language around what the original incentive was designed to do. And although we don't have tracking or a way to understand where the funds are going, as long as we as a state of California can encourage investment into the things that we think are meaningful and align with state goals and related to affordable housing, related to climate, renewable energy, and the communities that really are in needing of the impact, I think that that's really kind of our goal and outset within the state. As much as we can direct and align the incentive of investment in places where it's meaningful and where it will have great impact on the communities that the investment will end up in is kind of our goal and outset. So thank you, Stacy. And with that, I'll maybe, answer any questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Trey. We really appreciate, one, all of the resources and all of the support that you continue to give us and our businesses in the community. I think I want to underscore something that a few of the panelists have said, including yourselves, is Opportunity Zone Capital, for example, did not fund their full business or their full project. It was one part of other funding instruments in their capital stack. So I don't want folks to walk away with the impression that one investor or two investors will fund everything that the business needs. It typically is a component of a larger capital stack. And what Trey is sharing here with you, and thank you for the preview and the early insights of what's coming in the budget, because now we can see where there's going to be state support in terms of grants and programs that are industry specific and geared towards businesses that can be a first layer in, for example. A fund like LEN, who invests in very early stage, can be a second layer in, for example. When the business matures more and there is additional traction and revenue, et cetera, there can be another investment component that's from a private equity fund. So I want folks to start thinking in that term. And I also want to share, I know Rob had to jump off, but he would be thrilled to hear about all of the programs that you shared, because we do have a number of those here in Riverside County. For example, we have 49 Opportunity Zone census tracts, which is the third highest in the state of California. So there is quite a bit of zones where businesses can relocate into or expand and get some of these preferential considerations or treatments that the incentive provides. In addition to the opportunity zones, we have 44 hub zones, for example. The hub zones provides preferential consideration for any federal contracting opportunities. We have 44 of those that more or less align with our opportunity zones. We have, I believe there's about 14 foreign trade zones, for example. So that would provide incentives to any businesses that have import-export taxes that we want to abate while they're manufacturing and producing their goods. That aligns as well with our opportunity zones. There are many place-based incentives that now businesses can start looking to that maybe they wouldn't have considered before. That works well now because we're meshing private and public capital. So new market tax credits, there are zones for that we also have in our area. LIHTC credits, where when we start talking about real estate, there are zones for that we also have in our area. So on the real estate side and on the business side, there are specific zones that align really well with opportunity zones where you can start layering in capital. I think now is a great point. We have about 7 minutes left, but I would like to go to a couple of questions and get some final takes from our panelists, because you all have been so great about kind of peeling back the curtain and opening the doors to everything related to your business and how you've been proceeding so far. So since Rob had to jump off, I think I will kick it over to maybe Len. Let's go back to you since you kicked us off, and Ajit next. You both work nationwide, so would love to hear, especially from you, Len. We want more investors in Riverside County. So, for example, how do you look at geographies separate from the business that would make you interested in investing in a place? Because this is a place-based designation. So, how do you look at things that in geographies? And Ajit, you're saying you're going to Alabama next. You're going to other states. How do you look at geographies, and what kind of support do you typically need to move into other areas or expand when you're looking at opportunity zones or other?
Yeah, so I'll pick up first. That alignment about funding sources is actually very important from a geographic point of view. Every we're a nationwide fund, that's true, but every investment we have made has had local support in various forms. It could be other funding support. I'll pick another example. Unfortunately, it's another example in Baltimore, which is where I am close to. But we invested in a robotics company there. They had state funding because it was an important industry for medical devices. Is a very important industry here in the state of Maryland. So this is an industry that they support, and they wanted that particular technology. It's actually an interesting story. The technology was licensed out of Johns Hopkins University. The company was actually founded in Silicon Valley, licensing the technology. And the founders, in part, I don't want to put California on the spot here, but in part, they moved back to Baltimore because of the state incentives, as well as being close to the engineers. That's going to happen. I don't want to make a competition here, but that the point is that local support is very important. And I'll also point out our fund is only, and you made this point, and all the other panelists have made this point in one form or another, we're only part of the capital stack. We might be an early part that as they're growing. However, we look to other support geographically, yeah, and typically they come out of the EDA office or something like that at the state or city level. That's where those are great resources. The other thing that we look for out of our businesses and the business leaders, so taking away the public money for a minute, is a commitment to that community. So, and other partners within that community. So there's things like local hospitals and local universities that are anchor tenants in that area. And they are typically also, oftentimes they are also in those same opportunity zones. So in addition to the public funded support, there's also anchor tenant, I'll call it, support that are interested in that same geographic neighborhood. And that's another source that we look for as geographic interest that are going to go along for the ride with us and all these other players that have been mentioned and into that community. So again, I'll point to the Johns Hopkins example. Johns Hopkins is very active in Baltimore. They're an anchor institution. They're not going anywhere. They're going to be there for the long term, and they're a great partner on this particular business line. So that's another thing. And I mentioned the Native American one. You know, you want to be consistent with the geographic, local customs and nature of the communities as well. That's a rural area, so it's a different area. However, it's very important that the business kind of fits in. And we actually, as part of our due diligence process, we actually survey local leaders about how this business will fit in with the priorities within the local communities. We actually ask that independently of the business. We actually ask that. So that's another geographic filter on our side.
Amazing. Thank you, Len. Ajit, any thoughts you want to share in terms of how you look at things when you're looking at other geographies? Oh, and you're on mute.
1 minute summary, and that is that we only go to communities where we are invited and welcome. We don't, because we don't want to be parachuting into places that we don't know. We've been to Philadelphia because we were invited by people, and they also made a commitment to help raise money. And that's an opportunity zone project. In Alabama, it's not an opportunity zone project, but we got invited by folks to do it, and they introduced us to decision makers in the government and other places that have access to funding. So the key, I think, is if you're going to go uninvited, you better have a lot more resources than we have. And in our case, when we go, is leveraging our learning knowledge and experience with local knowledge to do it.
Amazing.
Thanks for that.
Thank you. John, I'll go to you next. You're our Riverside, based company. So would love to hear what's next on the agenda for you. How do you need support? What are you looking for? If this is the time to put out any call to your county for support, would love to hear what's on your plate.
Well, we are, since we've talked, it continues to grow. So we're playing on a national level and almost at the international level at this point. But opportunity zones are our bread and butter. That's where we want, because we make an impact, but not only an economic impact, but we make an environmental impact, and we make a socio-economic impact for the communities. And this is the way the businesses and the way that Ajit and Len are, the businesses that they're investing in, it's not just a building in downtown 123 Main Street, you name your city, that only benefits those folks. We really what we need is the business was set up, that real estate already had their deal. This is really set up for businesses. How do you bring capital, and how do you get entrepreneurs on board, and how do we impact our communities? Well, that's what we're trying to do. We're going out, and there's 653. Am I going to light up all 653? I don't know, but I'm going to try. But we're going to make an impact. I mean, we bring jobs. we bring incentives, we bring, it's all good for everybody involved. It's a win-win. It's a opportunity zones were bipartisan and they've remained bipartisan, and that's a good deal. And I think everybody here on this panel can attest to that.
John,
So-
I think that's a mic drop moment right there. I mean, that's the perfect way to close out. And I know we're at time, so I will drop the links for everyone's website one more time in the chat box so that if folks want to follow up, get more information, they have access to all the contact information they need. But I really want to thank our panelists for taking the time today and joining. We will be reaching out and following up with additional events and learning opportunities. Next week, for example, we'll be releasing a report with UCR on the innovation ecosystem in the Inland Empire. So a very deep dive into the companies that's coming out of the region, the emerging industries, and if you're looking for different ideas or places to invest, I would invite you to join. We'll share that information after the webinar. So thank you again for everyone for joining, and we will be in contact soon.
Thank you.
Thank you all.